Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Now then, you're very welcome back. So we are turning to hurling because the championship kicks off with a bang this weekend. And to that end, we have drafted in Eddie Brennan. You're there, Eddie? Hello, Eddie Brennan. Come on in.
Good evening, Joe. How are you?
There you go. I was worried for a moment. You're very welcome. We have Denis Walsh of the Sunday Times. Hey, Denis, how you doing?
Hi, Joe. How are things?
Very well. And Mr. Jamie Wall is there as well. Hey, Jamie.
Joe, how are you?
Very well.
How are you?
This is what I wanted, Jamie. Champions League evening, knockout stages. Forget all that. We've got three solid hurling men here. You wouldn't even dream of turning on TV and watching that stuff.
It's definitely not over my left shoulder there. 0-0 Man City, Atletico, 6 minutes 50 seconds gone. Yeah, definitely not.
So hurling is very much upon us now, and I suppose that is a talking point in itself, Denis. We are starting here on April the 16th. This will be done and dusted by July 17th. So in effect, 6 weeks ahead of the usual finale in September, which has kind of been the month since about the 1920s. The duration, interestingly, is about the same as it was, for instance, in 2019, about 13 weeks of, I suppose, if you want to call it, promotional value and being on the airwaves and on the television. But there is certainly, even looking at a few texts in this evening when we mentioned you guys were coming on, there is certainly uncertainty over the July 17th All-Ireland final decision. Where are you on it?
Yeah, I'm kind of conflicted about it, Joe, to be honest. I mean, I can see it from both sides. Anybody who's ever been involved at club level will know the kind of disruption that inter-county stuff can cause. And I was lucky enough to be chair of my own club for 3 years. And, you know, when Cork were going okay, and we would have had guys involved. And, you know, the club players would have been tormented, really, not knowing when their second round, third round was, and could they go away, could they go on holiday, could they go to, you know, to weddings or whatever. So there was that uncertainty and that kind of instability for club players, which was unsatisfactory. And I mean, this is why we are where we are, Joe, because the GA over the years failed to deliver an integrated fixture list. And, you know, the reason why was, you know, county boards around the country refused to kind of, were refused or were unable or felt unable to take on their own inter-county managers and push through fixtures that were uncomfortable for inter-county managers. And Croke Park would always say it's up to the clubs. The clubs are the county board, not the executive. But in reality, that's not how it works. So the reason why the split season came in obviously was because of the pandemic. That was the kind of that was where the kind of split season was given a run, and it seemed to work. But it's not the ideal solution, I don't believe. But every other solution that they tried over the years failed, mostly because of a failure of implementation at local level. I mean, there was a club month, if you remember, around the same of the year. It failed to work in most places. So we are where we are. I mean, an All-Ireland final, Joe, in July 17th. I mean, there's so much goes on in sport in July. August, really, I mean, well, everybody All-Ireland finals in September. August is the month where the GA really had the pitch to themselves. I mean, when you think of all the other major sports, you know, the rugby tours, the summer tours are over. The Premier League's only getting going end of August. August was when there was All-Ireland semi-finals, huge weekends in Croke Park. That's when the GA had the pitch to themselves, and that's what they're throwing away, really.
Jamie, there's a text in on 53106. An All-Ireland final in the middle of July is beyond crazy. I'm a club player who just wanted certainty. I'm also a supporter of my county. The solution wasn't playing off the championship as quickly as possible. Where are you in all this?
Probably somewhere in the middle, similar to Denis. I think probably, first of all, I'm broadly in favour of the split season. And I think anyone, like Denis said, anyone ever involved at club level knows that make the two working together, especially the way the club demands have gone, is just a non-runner, because club teams now are preparing to such a level that it would be kind of ridiculous to ask them to prepare basically for most of the year, or for the 2 weeks before their biggest game, and then draft their best player in 90% of instances in at kind of a week's notice, try fit him into probably centre back or centre forward. Your entire game plan is based around him. I am in favour of the split season in that sense. I do think we possibly squeezed it a little too much. Maybe as in like it didn't. Like, I'm certainly not in favour of September, but equally, did it have to be the middle of July? Like, could it have been the August bank holiday weekend? Like, would that have been? Is there enough there, like, you know, to get it right? But like, I suppose, like Denis said, like we're here because of a failure over the last, you know, 20 years, and this has gotten worse every single year. And I empathise with the texter there saying that they're a club player, but equally they support their county. But like, I can only say, you know, from my time as a club player, like I remember 2013, the year Cork got to the All-Ireland final, like we were playing championship and not knowing whether we were going to be playing a week later or whether we were going to be playing 4 weeks later, and then Cork draw with Clare, and we realise we still don't know when we're going to be playing. So like, things like that are, you know, I do empathise that, you know, all the club player wanted was certainty, but they didn't want it to be over so quickly. But I suppose, like, you can't eat your cake and have it too. You kind of have to, like, at some point, the people making decisions have to set a date, and a date that works, because especially if we're going to have provincial club championships, All-Ireland club championships, if they're trying to commit to this calendar year that they have kind of decided they think is a priority. So like, it's a very tough one. I think I understand. I suppose I think now is probably not the time really for the chat. I think we should play it out. I think sometimes we're very much, you know, we saw this with the football kind of coverage, with the coverage around possibly changing the football season. There was so much talk about what was wrong with the proposal that we never actually got to playing it out, seeing what was right with it, and then saying, right, these elements worked well, let's keep them, let's move on now and kind of tweak it. You know, I think like that's kind of, it's a big failing of, I suppose, the GA, in that like we have this very bureaucratic system and things have to go to these congresses that takes 12 months to get something fixed, and then it doesn't come in for 24 months, and then everyone gives out for 36 months, and then something gets changed and we start the cycle all over again, you know. So like, I can see both sides of it. I certainly think from a club perspective point of view that you know, the integrated fixture list is just, it's an on-runner, but I certainly would like to see maybe just see how this year goes and say, yeah, maybe we push everything back an extra 2 weeks. You know, do we need league semi-finals? I know they were decent occasions this year, like, but do we need league semi-finals? Do we need things like that? You know, they're the kind of places where I would make the cuts, we'll say, and maybe start the league a little later so that the championship finishes a little later, and give that breathing window at the other end of the calendar for finishing off club championships. So you know, the All-Ireland club championships, the Munster and Leinster club championships, and Connacht and Ulster, that they can run into next year, you know, so that you're not totally bound by this calendar year thing, and that's where to get the extra bit of time, and that you get that extra 2-3 weeks then at the start of August, you know, first, second week of August.
Yeah, I'll give you a final word on it, Eddie.
Yeah, look, Joe, I suppose myself and yourself discussed this maybe briefly on 2 occasions, and I said I was kind of going to hold my fire on it until we kind of run through it. But I just had a quick browse through the fixtures, and we'll say as of the weekend of the 21st and 22nd of May, there are 2 teams finished in Munster and 3 in Leinster. So my question is, will their local club championship, be it run on a league basis or whatever it is, will that roll into town over the next 3 weeks? Will they have meaningful matches? And I suppose I'm speaking from just 2 points, and I stand to be corrected on one of them, but I understand that the Kilkenny County final is fixed for the October bank holiday weekend. So in a situation where Kilkenny were perhaps finished that weekend or go to a quarter final, we'll say the 4th of June or thereabouts, you know, that's nearly 6 months before you hit a county final. So you're going to ask the question, are the county lads who are after putting in a massive effort, and again, the club lads waiting for meaningful matches, you know, and again, we're talking about Kilkenny, which wrongly or rightly is not complicated by football. So we have a straightforward system. And I remember a quick conversation I had in 2013 when Cork beat Kilkenny. And I would have, I suppose, voiced my opinion to the then chairman, said, look, can we roll with the championship now, get going with the rounds of league? And the reply was, look, lads are going playing in America maybe, or there's summer holidays for families that are waiting. And that's, we get all that. So there's a lot of things that hold it back. But that same year, Kilkenny were finished in July, and Clara then won the county final in Kilkenny, and they had to play Oulart 6 days after they won the county final, which they hadn't won in a long time. So there's a lot of elements at play, like will counties roll in with it quickly enough? So there's a lot to consider. But again, just having looked at it for the last couple of the days since even the last time I was speaking to you, again, I'm waiting to see. But I definitely, I would prefer to see the All-Ireland final played a little bit later. Fair enough, the All-Ireland champions are going to have a right good tail into the summer, not like, like maybe unseen before. But yeah, it's something that's a concern now, and I think there's gathering momentum. Definitely, there's a little bit of grumbling about how quickly it's all run off.
Yeah, I think go on, Denis.
Joe, if I may, on that point that Eddie made there is a very good point, because a few years ago, before the split season came in, there were a few counties who were. There was one year when Tipperary were out in early June in Munster. They just had a very, I think it was Michael Ryan's last year actually. So even though they were out in early June, the clubs in Tip didn't want to play championship in July or August, or for June, July, because they had players away for the summer, like lads on J1, students or whatever. Now we've had 2 years probably of no J1s, so I imagine this summer is going to be a massive summer for J1s for lads going away. I was talking to Noel Lane last week below in Galway. In his club, they already know 4 or 5 of their hurling team that are going away. So, the clubs I believe the clubs in Dublin have already been told, or they were given a fixture list for the year, and they were told there's going to be a break from the end of July to the end of August. So there's a 4-week break where there's no club championship games going to happen in Dublin. So, like, I can imagine other counties doing something similar. That even though the summer, in theory, is there for the clubs, a lot of county boards and a lot of clubs won't necessarily want to play in June and July because players will be away.
Yeah, I heard Brian Lohan making that point during the league when he was making the point that things are too condensed. He was saying, well, look, in Clare anyway, even though we were out early, no club action actually happened for a lot of the summer anyway. There's, it's like the county boards are still wedded to the old traditional time slot.
Yeah, well, I mean, if there's Eddie mentioned the county final in Kilkenny in October, Eddie, is it October bank holiday weekend?
Yeah, that's what we're provisionally fixed for, I think.
Yeah, and that's been the date for the Dublin finals for the last few years. Both finals, Saturday, kind of a Sunday, Monday has been their routine in recent years in October. So whether those finals come forward, I don't know. But it seems to me that even though this time is being created for club players and for club championships in the height of summer, I'm not sure how much of it.
But even on that, Denis, sorry if I jump in again there, Joe, briefly. Sorry.
No, lads, jump in away. That's great. Go on.
Yeah, like I would say, right, and again, it's easy talk because we don't know the headaches that fixtures committees have, and it is not simple and straightforward. However, I would like to think that there are 1 or 2 provisional or plan A's and plan B. So if, for talk's sake, my own county were to be finished the 21st and 22nd of May, are we going to roll into club championship 3 weeks later, whereby you have your 5 round matches? If they go a little bit further, are we going to get it? So when is that going to roll in? That at least is a level of certainty. And I think if that's the case, if you can put up, are we progressive enough in these in boards like that to try give people a little bit of heads up for club managers? And again, the vast majority, over 90% of our club players are playing at club level. So we have to cater for everybody. And obviously bring in the holidays, you could open up a 2-week window. But I definitely believe there should be a default that if the county is finished up or they get dumped out of the championship on such and such a week, a quarter-final week, well, 3 weeks later, we're rolling with round 1 of the league or whatever.
Eddie, will you have the clubs grumbling then and the manager saying, well, hang on, I can't prepare a team that way. We're in the, we're trying to peak physically, and so suddenly it's, dependent on how Kilkenny go at the weekend, I either have to be ready or I don't have to go for another 6 weeks. That's not good enough for me. You'll always have the grumbling, won't you?
Yeah, there is, and there will that, and I absolutely understand that completely because you're on standby. But I think if you're being fed that information with some degree, saying, well, look, if that doesn't happen, so therefore maybe 2 weeks in advance of that, 3 weeks, so you're saying in a 5-week block, we start really upping the ante. And if the team progress, okay, we might have to scale it back, and that's not straightforward. I know I'm sure there'll be plenty of people shout at the radio when they're hearing that. But at least you have something to work with, or else whatever it is, if it's a 4 or 5 week window, so be it, and allow teams to do their challenge matches. And also, look, the county players, a little bit of come down. But I guarantee you, most county players, if they're dumped out of the championship, they'll want to get back in the saddle straight away. They'll love nothing more, I think, than going back to their club and, get a bit of downtime. They'll still get their summer holiday maybe that they wouldn't have expected to get, and they'll gladly take that. But a week off for them, they're in good shape. They'll blend in very quickly with their club mates.
And can I ask, Jamie, for instance, you might have a sense of various counties are certainly your own. Are there pockets in the summer which are now marked as 100%? You're not going to have games in this 2 or 3 week period. You can go away on your family holiday. We're not going to screw you over last minute here.
Not as such, not in Cork anyway. Like I actually have been dying to jump in there because what I really wanted to say was I think the solution resolves in kind of club players and club people putting more of a value on leagues. And I think in Kerry they do put that value on the county league. And I think in Cork our schedule brings us up to 2 weeks before the last weekend of July. So I'm just looking at the calendar here. If we make a league final, it's on the weekend of a potential All-Ireland final. So like we do have meaningful, or what I would class as meaningful club games in terms of league games throughout the entire summer. And well, I suppose for me, like I know Eddie is talking about meaningful games as being championship games, but I suppose we have to, if we want, as club people would say on the other side of it, want to have meaningful games that have a guaranteed certainty, we have to say, right, we have our league structure, it brings us up to 2-3 weeks before our championship structure, and we play that off throughout the entire summer, and it has a value in its own right. And we're not trying to bring championships up and do them earlier if our county is knocked out, because I think that's the uncertainty that we're trying to get rid of. So, and then the other thing is then, Joe, like in terms of those blocks where you have certainty of we're not going to be playing a championship game, you have that as such because you've got league fixtures that bring you up to a certain date. And if a player misses a league game, they miss a league game. That's the sacrifice that's kind of decided as worthwhile for that holiday or that that trip away or whatever it is. So like I think the solution is actually in putting more value in that kind of definite league structure that leads into a championship structure that is viable no matter when your county is knocked out.
Yeah, we could go around in circles on this all evening. Canate, by the way, has scored for Liverpool, so they're truly in control of that tie. Still 0-0 in Madrid. One texter says, I can't help feeling the clubs won't benefit at all when every Johnny County man goes off to America now for their free summer, which is a text into 53106. Denis, I suppose with the view to the Jamie, you just said let's stop all the moaning. We've done a good 20 minutes moaning there, so this is top GA coverage, right what we should be doing. I suppose the headline news, Denis, is that the round robin is very much back for the first time since 2019 and COVID. So 5 Munster counties, 6 in Leinster, top 2 in the final will qualify, and the third best team as well into a quarter final. I think everybody is in general agreement, Denis. This has been a fantastic addition to the championship, and it's nice to have it back. And this, okay, it's a little earlier in the year, but it does make for fairly mouthwatering couple of weeks here.
Oh, it does, absolutely, Joe. And I mean, if you look back, there's been so few times actually in the history of the game where this system would have worked, because like Munster for decades was lopsided and Leinster the same. And there was plenty of seasons when there would have been one-sided games in those championships back in the knockout days, the kind of straight knockout days. And certainly, I mean, at the moment, I would say that there's 9 teams who could potentially beat each other on any given day, and that's more than hurling ever had, really. And so it's the perfect system for the kind of teams that hurling has at the moment, and for the equality of standards that are there. And I mean, as you say, like the games at the weekend are just they're savage matches. I mean, for anybody who can't even get to the games, you have Wexford and Galway on Sky on Saturday, and you got the 2 games on RT on Sunday in Munster. Fantastic matches, all of them. And like there's kind of the one thing. I mean, you can make these. I mean, there's clear favourites to qualify from each province, but one of the patterns of the round robin for the first couple of years was how many surprises there were and how many shocks there were along the way. And I think the home and away element promotes that kind of uncertainty and that kind of excitement. So look, I was talking to someone this morning who says that there's 37,000 tickets already sold for Cork Limerick on Sunday, which is the biggest crowd in the new park since the new park opened. The previous record, I think, was 34,500 for Cork Limerick on a Saturday night round robin, a brilliant game in 2018. So it looks like Páirc Uí Chaoimh is going to be close up to almost a full house on Sunday, which is terrific for a game in the middle of April, when we were all kind of wondering for the last few weeks or months, would people really be tuned in for the middle of April?
Yeah. Oh, these are Ed Sheeran numbers. I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Exactly. The other thing with the round robin, so this time around there'll be no 3 weeks in a row for any team, because that was one of the, and again, that's, if we're talking revolution versus tweaking, that's a nice clever tweak, and that will improve matters, I think. I mean, Eddie, I vividly remember Kilkenny on the home and away point going to Parnell Park under Pat Gilroy. Might have been Gilroy's first year in charge. Really sunny bacon day and like a real proper match, and I think Kilkenny pulled it out of the fire at the end. But Parnell Park, tight pitch, Dubs enjoying home advantage. That was one of the early days, and I remember thinking there's really something in this. This is the way to go. So it's great to have it back.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'd agree with Denis. I think when you have that type of crowd filling stadiums at Easter weekend, sure, from a hurling perspective, we've been feasting on this for the last couple of weeks with a good league and very little time, and we're straight into it. And I think it would have you kind of excited, because sometimes, usually around Easter time, it's only when the clocks go back that training starts going a bit later. But we have championship matches, and the one I've spoken about before, I'd love a Friday night match. I think it would be just a real novel factor. But look, we're not going to split hairs on that. I think there's some exciting matches the weekend, and going back to that match, I remember, watching that distinctly, and I think, if I'm right, Conal Keeney gave one of the mighty displays and I think dislocated his shoulder at the end. And
yeah,
I remember towards the end of that match, actually, Owen Murphy went short to Pádraig Welsh when Kilkenny were a point up, and he fumbled the ball for a second with two Dublin forwards bearing down him, and they just worked it out. And it's just something that, at the time, I remember saying, Jesus, Brian Cody will lose whatever little bit of hair he has left when he saw something like that happening so deep in the match. But it just added to the occasion, and it just added to what maybe Kilkenny were trying to do back then. And I finished with a point, but it was a cracking game. And as you said there, I think the Saturday evening there, most of the Leinster, I see all the Leinster ones are fixed for Saturdays, with maybe an odd Munster one there. But just looking at the fixtures, there's some brilliant ones there, and even one that I think is, maybe I hope I'm reading this right, but there's an odd fixture on the 8th of May where I think Limerick are playing Tip. I mean, that could be curtains for one of those teams. It's that there's so much at stake looking at that match. And that's what really has made this round robin what it is. And yes, we said, look, a couple of teams are going to be sore at the end of this, and they're somewhere short. But I think from a perspective of hurling people, this is just absolutely brilliant. And like Denis said there, the unpredictability, the home and away, it just adds to a great sense of atmosphere at all those matches.
Let's get into some of the teams and what to expect on the pitch. So Eddie and I spoke a few weeks back about Waterford and their propensity for goals and their willingness to go for goals. And Denis, you wrote a fantastic piece in the Times about goal trends in the championship. So I might put it to you, Jamie, and you can give us your thoughts. So to take Denis's piece, for instance, 2016, there were no goals in the league final, for instance. Cork and Tipperary played. There was no goal produced for the first time in 115 years of Cork Tipperary games. And there were below 2.5 goals per game, which was only the second time that had happened in the Hurling Championship. And then he mentioned 2017, where Galway won the All-Ireland with no goal in their last 4 games of the Championship. So 5 hours of All-Ireland winning hurling with no goals. And then Limerick became the 6th team to win a final without a goal in the final. And in 2020, Limerick became the 7th. So sorry, Galway were the 6th in their All-Ireland final to win a final without a goal, and then Limerick just the 7th in history to win without a goal. So the basic point being, we were looking at hurling and thinking, God, our goals becoming slightly more optional. And now last year we jumped back up to 3.5 goals per game, the highest in nearly a decade. And like I said, Waterford maybe leading the charge are trying to put goals back on the map again. That's been one of the big changes, it feels like, in a general way in the game over the last while.
Yeah, I think so, and I think you've actually mapped it out quite well there in terms of the kind of progression of it, Joe. Like, where I suppose if you think back to 2016 or so, I suppose we were right in the middle of the kind of the era of the sweeper or the 7th defender or whatever you want to call it, really, whatever term was given to it. But I suppose a natural consequence of that kind of packed defence is teams got much better at picking teams off from distance, and Galway showed that. And then obviously Limerick were the masters of it. Like, I think they scored 31 points in a game in that championship in 2020 in one of them, and I suppose, so that's the natural evolution there. And then I suppose what happens is you play the likes of Limerick, you say, okay, we can't keep giving them shots from distance, you start pushing up, and then you start giving up goal chances. And I suppose like it's just everyone's kind of always following the latest trend, and you know, where you're trying to pick a team off, a team then pushes up because they say we're not going to let them pick us off, and that's how you end up with goal chances and a greater kind of team goals. But that's kind of the cycle of it. And I do think there's also something in, I think, you know, would say if you think about, you know, the great teams gone by, and Eddie being probably the best position to answer this, but having been on one of the great teams, like Tip had to find a way to beat that Kilkenny team, and they decided the way they were going to go about it was to try to move their backline around and create goal chances in space. And I think Limerick, you know, have shown in the last couple of years that they're coming as one of those great teams. And Waterford under Cal have obviously decided you need 30-something points to beat them in a game. If you score 3-4 goals, that's 9 to 12 of those points. And I think that's I think it's been a very kind of economics-based approach, we'll say. So I think that's kind of the way it has evolved, and I think that fight has evolved that way. Like you look at Waterford, they are the challenger, we'll say. You know, I know Derek had some comments that Liam Cahill might thank him for, but where he put a bit of a bullseye in Waterford's back. But they are still the kind of the challenger coming at the top dog, and they've quite likely identified that they're going to need to score between 2 and 4 goals if they want to beat Limerick. So I think that's been a really definite kind of thing in their play that you can actually point out and say that it's very, very obvious that that's what they're trying to do. And I think it's a natural progression on the way the game has gone in the last couple of years.
Denis, where are Limerick? So we're gonna find out very shortly. Cork away and then Waterford at home. Like, what a nice sharp start to their championship.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you mentioned earlier on, Joe, about there'll be no more three week fixture congestion issues. But Limerick and Waterford play each other 6 days after their opening game, so that's the two best teams in the country, arguably playing each other in a game that will definitely matter. Like, there's no question about that. And you would have said that Limerick and Waterford had the deepest squads in the country, but for I think probably the first time under John Kiley's management, they have a bit of an injury. Not crisis, but they certainly have injury issues. Seamus Flanagan, it looks like he's out for weekend. Peter Casey's out for the season. They were two of their best players last year, outstanding players. There's Kyle Hayes is a serious doubt by all accounts. Cian Lynch is carrying something. Now, they do have a squad, obviously, to replace all these guys. But some of the guys that they use off the bench, they don't seem comfortable using them as starters. So people like Pat Ryan has been a regular off the bench, but not a regular starter. David Reedy has had a few more starts, but those guys have worn the same jerseys in 3 All-Ireland finals. I think it's number 24, number 25, and number 26. So they've been around for years. They're very experienced, but they're not guys that Limerick tend to start. So they're going to end up using players that over recent years, they've been using as impact subs. And that's been another factor with Limerick, as we know, for the last few years. They've got to jump a real bounce from their bench. So it'll be interesting to see what team actually turns up, what players are fit, who runs out. But they have the squad, you'd imagine, to cope with that.
Eddie, who are your 3 to come out of Munster and why?
I went for Limerick, Cork and Waterford.
Yeah.
But yes, there's something in me telling me that if there was to be a bolter in Munster, it could well be the Banner Boys. I think there's something happening under Brian Lohan down there, but I'm not sure have they the artillery to supplement Tony Kelly up front. They have a very high work ethic. I think in Cleary at full back, they have solved that problem there. He is a real stopper in the shape and mould of his manager. And I just think that the quality is probably not there. Tip at the moment for me, I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's 4 points is the handicap on Sunday, which is still, I think the bookies are still quite wary of Tip, and rightly so, because you just don't know. But I think the big blow there for me, and maybe the one that's going to give Waterford, a lot of confidence, is that Shane McCallan is not going to play on the weekend, and he's a huge loss. They needed him. They've lost serious guys, leaders in the dressing room. So I think for me, that's the two guys that I think it's Limerick or Tip and Clare that look to be the ones that are the outsiders in Munster. But a draw or two this weekend could really turn Munster into an absolute battle zone. and that's what will keep everyone in it. Whereas what you possibly don't want is that someone, you know, gets their 3 wins under their belt on their first 3 matches. Now you have a team potentially, you know, going into the last match knowing they're home and hose. So what do? So there's all sorts of things, and while we're trying to pick the lottery numbers here as what's going to happen in Munster, it could all go out the window the weekend. Yeah.
If we move to Leinster before clock really comes against us, then, I mean, everybody probably already looking forward to Kilkenny-Galway on the 1st of May in Galway. That's in round 3. On Shefflin and Galway then, Denis, what's your sense of what he's tried to do with this team? What's your sense of what he's got to work with here? And what are we expecting from Galway, who maybe, you know, if things click, have the potential to be a bit of a bolter this year?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you rewind 12 months, Joe, this time last year, there were 7 guys on the Galway panel who were over 30, and each of those 7 players were either on the team or close to the team. So they were the oldest team in the championship last year, effectively. Now, all those guys were well-known players and great players, you know, over the years and so on. But Galway had a real kind of an issue with regeneration that Henry had to take on, and you know, it's been a tricky league from that point of view, trying to get players in. I think no other team. I saw the figure somewhere. I can't quote the numbers now exactly, but no other team uses as many players in the league as Galway did. So they were trying a lot of guys, and it's not a 1-year project. I'm sure for Henry, this is a 2 or 3 year thing. I don't expect them to be the finished product this year, but like that had to be addressed. They couldn't go on with as many players in their 30s so close to the team as they had this time last year. So look, they're trying to replace Joe Canning. You know, for God's sake, you know, they're trying to score more goals. I mean, goals are still an issue for Galway. So Leinster is not as cutthroat as Munster. There's 6 teams, 2 of whom are probably off the pace. So it's 3 spots between 4 teams. Now, the last time we did round robin, it went down in Leinster. It went down to the very last puck of the ball with 4 teams on the same amount of points, and it was scoring difference, by which Galway were knocked out. So it could be as close as that again.
How do you see Leinster, Jamie?
Yeah, similar to Denis. I think it's, like you said, it's 4 for 3 slots, and I don't think there's that much between the 4 of them. Unfortunately, I probably do think that Munster are generally ahead of the 4 of them. So it's almost like, in its own right, the Leinster Championship is going to be very exciting, but I wonder, like I think we're going to have 3 Munster teams in the semi-finals, and I think we're going to have 2 in the final. That's just kind of the way I see it at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm quite looking forward to Wexford Galway at the weekend, though, because of the performance of Wexford in that league semi-final and how kind of at odds it was with an otherwise really good league campaign. It kind of it just throws into focus, kind of like, you just have to wonder, like, where really are they, I suppose. And that's a real question for a lot of people coming out of the league, because, you know, there wasn't really much jeopardy in the league. There was kind of, all the established teams knew we're going to be fine here, we're not going to get relegated. So, you know, there's a lot of teams kind of in the last couple of weeks, Limerick as well, you know, things are quite quiet, and you're kind of looking ahead to this weekend saying there could be a real explosion here. So like, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what Wexford response from that Waterford kind of drubbing is going to be. Is it going to be a case of that drubbing has really damaged them, or is it going to be a case of that was a real kick that was needed and it came at the right time rather than 4 weeks later against Galway?
Yeah. On Kilkenny then, I mean, if you, like, on the face of it, a lot of really good results here over the last number of years. Eddie won the league in 2018 for what's that whatever that is worth, which is certainly not nothing. And then the win over Limerick in the semi-final of 19 was in some respects Cody's finest hour, and then 2020 semi-final against Waterford in that kind of epic wild night, and then semi-final defeat last year after extra time. Is the sense with Kilkenny that Cody is building something very new and very promising here, or is the sense that he's almost squeezing every last drop out of whatever of the old guard are left?
Yeah, it's maybe a little bit of both, but I think there's very much, you know, Cillian Buckley has got a new role, and I think he's doing really well at it. But obviously, you know, the fitness of TJ Reid is still, and having him there is obviously massive. You know, I think you need, you know, for me, you need a couple of guys to step up and have that all-star season. I think we have a couple of forwards. I think Owen Cody for me is the real deal. I think he's a class act. But again, you need Adrian Mullen's form to really rise. I think there's other guys there. Billy Ryan from my own club is in real good vein of form. Pádraig Walsh, where did they put him? So there's lots to be positive. They've definitely evolved. They've definitely shown they can play, the ball through the lines. Blanchfield has been a major find. Mikey Butler is solid there. So he has a lot of things to be very positive about going into the championship. But I suppose the question mark then comes back to was when the pressure came on a little bit there against Cork, and Cork threw down a different type of challenge to them in the second half. They just struggled around the 45 midfield to get their hands on the ball, to open up the Cork backs and that type of thing. So I think that to me is probably the question mark that remains over Kenny. Their in-game awareness, their in-game, tactical change, maybe mid-match, that they can, change it up on the fields, stop a rut like that. And maybe you'd say, look, some of those guys aren't, the individual leaders that they need to be, that when everyone else is being tied up, one guy, clicks and does something brilliant for you. But look, at the same time, that first half against Cork and the league campaign in general, they've shown that they are well able to play any kind of a game. But, obviously they have to be brave now. I think they really have to be brave and stick with their guns and persist with what's working for them and just keep doing more of that. But yeah, look, I think of the four Leinster teams we're talking about there, they're probably the ones that have a fair idea where they're going. The others definitely remain. We'll get that revealed the weekend.
Okay. The clock is coming against us, as I knew it would. So the All-Ireland final is on July 17th, Sunday, July 17th. We will reconvene with you three on the Tuesday in the build-up to that All-Ireland, and potentially play a clip back if one of you says something very profound here. So the question is... yeah, no one here, says Eddie. Denis, you can get the ball rolling. Who's going to be in that final? Who's going to win? And what are we going to be saying about this hurling championship, good, bad or indifferent?
Look, I think Limerick and Waterford are the two best teams in the country. I think Limerick are still the best team in the country, and it wouldn't surprise me one bit if that was the All-Ireland final, Joe. I really hope it's going to be a terrific championship. I mean, Jesus, as I said at the start, there are so many teams who are, in the top rank now, are kind of proper elite teams, and we didn't always have this, far from it. So I'm really looking forward to a brilliant championship. I think it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah. Jamie, what do you want to be hearing yourself say in 3 months' time?
I think I'm going to be hearing myself say that Waterford and Limerick play the All-Ireland final, and there's just a part of me hopes that, Waterford are the kind of team that light up the summer just with the way they played all league. A lot of people talked about Liam Cahill and his decision to stay in Waterford, and there's been a lot of talk about that and about how loyal it was and all those things. But to be honest with you, I think there's two reasons Liam Cahill stayed in Waterford, and we're going to be watching both of them on Sunday. And that's, Tip are not where they would like to be, and I don't think they will be there for a couple of years. And Waterford are right there where everyone kind of thinks, okay, it's now or never. That group that won a minor All-Ireland, that won an under-21 All-Ireland, they broke a number of famines for Waterford, and they are all now at that 26, 27 age, so I think it's now for Waterford, and I think it's going to be Waterford Limerick All-Ireland final, and I think it's going to be Waterford, but yeah, who knows, it could be neither of them, and I look like an idiot and you'll be playing it back to me like that.
No, we wouldn't do that to you, honestly. So you think Waterford will do it this year?
Yeah, I really do, and the reason I do is just because for the first time probably ever in my life looking at Waterford, I've always looked at Waterford and these kind of mercurial players like Milan and Ken McGrath and Paul Flynn will say, but for the first time ever I'm looking at them and it's like they went without one of those mercurial players in Oxford against Cork or in the league final, and they were outstanding. They just oh yeah, Steve Minutes back in. They have, in my opinion, the strongest panel in the country, and that's the way the game is going. They have pace. They're organised. They tackle so hard. It's unbelievable. They're on the middle. Their work rate. I don't even know who's going to be in their half-back line in that they have DeBorka, Fagan, Caleb Lyons, and who's the other one? And Cork Daly. They've a midfield. They have Dara Lyons, Jamie Barron, all these options. They have options all over the pitch, more so than anyone. Yeah. So it's I'm just looking at them thinking, they are the complete package. if there's any sort of question about Limerick, and I'm not saying that there is, but if there is, I think they're ready now to ask it and maybe get the answer they want.
Okay. Eddie, final word?
Yeah, look, I'm on current form and what Liam Cahill has done with Waterford. I think to use the Phil Jackson analogy, he has got rid of the me's and he has created a we mentality down there. I think he has them playing for each other. I think it's all about the team performance. And like I said, look, there were some great players in Waterford over the years, but the one thing you're saying is to get them to gel together and get the job done. And I think that's what Waterford look like they're going to do. They're in really good shape. I think the fact that they haven't broken up for a period of time where they go away from Liam Cahill and McBeavens and the setup, I think that's going to be a big plus. I think he will absolutely drive it into him in terms of, okay, let's park up the league, lads. It will all be quickly forgotten if we don't see the job. So for me, they're in as good a position as they'll ever be. I think it's definitely down to how hungry they are and all that. Equally then, I think, look, across the Treaty boys, I think, is there that burning desire still there in them? If a couple of those guys are injured, that could change up the whole thing and it can be massive because there's certain players Limerick can't be without. But I have a funny feeling there's going to be maybe a repeat of 1959 and I'm going to go for a Kilkenny Waterford All-Ireland final. And I don't think we'd be worried about the result in Kilkenny at the way Waterford are hurling at the moment.
Okay.
Wink, wink.
Okay, very interesting. I hope we're playing some of that back the Tuesday before the Sunday. Fellas, thanks so much. Eddie Brennan, Jamie Wall, Denis Walsh. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.